2024 meeting, February 6, 2024, Early Childhood Education Committee. And if everyone's had a chance to review the minutes, open to any changes, modifications, otherwise I'd entertain a motion to approve.
Motion C.
Second.
Thank you. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? And if you're online and opposing, you can scream objection in the chat. Just going to old business very briefly, chatting about our Valley Child Development and the Christine Avery Learning Center. The subgroup met before, just to hammer out the last bit of this. There are a few questions. I believe those are answered, but I will turn it over to one of the folks who is present for that meeting, if you don't mind sharing, Mark.
No, the last meeting, we gathered and looked at projected expenses and projected revenue and authorized an expenditure of $9,000.
Guys really know.
Well, that is my attention.
There we go.
We caught up.
So we authorized $39,000 to begin to cover their shortfall between now and the end of the year. And we'll be meeting with them on an ongoing basis to keep track of, with them, our revenue, primarily revenue, and if there are any surprising expenses that were unanticipated when we first reviewed the information they gave us.
Excellent. Anyone have any questions about that? Again, this is just kind of the best posture we could have found ourselves in with an unfortunate circumstance leading to it. Just a ton of thanks and gratitude for our community partners who gave us multiple options and left us feeling in a spot that we're not just picking an option, but a good option among several folks who wanted to be considered for this process. Feel good about where we landed. Thank you, Mark, and to the folks who aren't here. Leslie, you are here as well for that one, and Kit, who was not able to join us, but was also part of those conversations. Going on to new business, turn over to Sarah Goss for the grant review planning metrics.
Excellent. So I'm just going to take a few minutes of our time today to talk about this. Angeline has sent out a calendar invite for an orientation on the evaluation process, which is taking place on Thursday in 2 days. So we highly encourage any folks who are new to the committee to attend that session to get a more in-depth review of what this looks like, as well as any returning members who want a refresher on that process. But for today's purpose, I just want to walk you through 3 different components of what you'll be using for your evaluations. The first one is the scoring tool, and apologies that we don't have it to display up on the screen right now. I think the folks on Zoom can see it, but this was in your meeting packet. So the scoring tool is something that this committee and staff have worked together on in years prior to develop a point scale for each of the application questions that you will be scoring. So you'll see on the attachment A scoring criteria document that you have 6 different questions on the application that you're actually going to be scoring, and you'll be using the scoring matrix to do so. This was also included in the grant guidelines for all applicants, so they're going to be using the same thing as they're submitting their applications to help with each of these questions. You'll see the scoring, the points go from 1 point, which is the lowest possible amount to give a question that you're evaluating, all the way up to 5 points, which is the highest. They're all weighted equally for each question that you're scoring. So it is a maximum total of 30 points for each application if each question were to get 5 points. So again, I encourage you on your own time to go through, review this scoring matrix, get familiar with what this looks like for each of those application questions that you're going to be reviewing. And just check in as you're continuing to go through the process, as you start evaluating, looking through, reading applications. Your process or your lens might shift as you start getting more into it. So definitely be aware of that. You can always go back in and update scores if need be. The second thing that I wanted to show folks or talk through is the evaluation instructions in the software. So again, folks who have done this before should have a login for the grant portal. Folks who are new to this process will be receiving one, and that's something that Angelyn will work with you on. If you, for some reason, can't log in, contact Angelyn. She can help you with login information, resetting passwords and things like that. So as a reminder, applications close this Friday at 5 p.m., February 9th. That's a hard and fast deadline at 5 p.m. It's also a Friday, so staff probably won't get to actually downloading everything and assigning all of the applications to all the reviewers until Monday morning. We will let everyone know once that has been done. And then once you log into the grant portal, you'll see on your dashboard that there is a list of all the applications for you to go in and start evaluating and scoring. And if you need a refresher on how to get in there or utilize the grant software, I highly encourage you to attend the orientation this Thursday. Or if you can't make it this Thursday, reach out to either myself or Angela and we can help with that process, since we can't visually walk through it together today. And the last component is the funding allocation process. And this is kind of the last part of our evaluation process. So once all of the applications have been scored by the committee, that is when we will meet in April, either once or twice that month, depending on how much time is needed. And this committee will make recommendations for funding. Those will first go to the budget office and the county manager, and then will be presented to the Board of Commissioners for final approval. So just wanted to give a reminder of that process and last year what the scenario looked like that the committee decided on. So last year, the committee decided to allocate 100% of funding requests to projects that had an overall score of 86.9 or higher. And then projects that had an overall score of between 81 and 86.8% received 95% of their funding request. Again, that is something that this committee will revisit together this year, and there is a lot of opportunity for a different funding scenario or different ways of going about coming to a funding scenario. That is something that the strategy and innovation team is going to help us with again this year. But again, that will be towards the end of this evaluation process in April. So wanted to give a just a brief reminder of that, and we'll get more in the weeds as we move into that phase. Any questions?
You expect me to remember the login from last year?
Point out.
Please send it to me again. I can assure you. I bet I'm not the only one.
Hypothetically, I'm gonna say you should send it to me as well, just.
All right. I'll make a to-do list for Angela for when she comes back.
Commissioners get a privilege on that, or can we all?
There should be an easy reset password feature, and we're always accessible to sit with you or talk with you and reset, walk you through the process.
So, Sarah, one thing that would be helpful when, the scoring document, I know on our computer, it looks like, 2 pages, but as soon as you go to print out a hard copy, it becomes multiple pages. And if there was a way for us to have something sent to us that was printable as just 2 pages. I remember last year, 1 to 4 was on one sheet and 5 was on the next sheet on the printer. And so it was always handy to have a hard copy
Yeah.
to refer to as we're reading through those.
Okay.
And Angela did something last year, made it printable.
Yeah, so the applications are due Friday. What staff will be doing when we get to work on Monday is going through and affirming eligibility and getting the applications ready for you and moving them over into your review section, your bin in the software. And you'll get an email from Angela that has a printed out like a spreadsheet, a downloaded spreadsheet of all the applications, which one the organization program request amount, and we can also include PDF copies so the formatting isn't all wonky of the scoring sheet. And anything else that you can think of, just hit reply on there. And we'll be glad to provide. Last year, there were 29 applications, ballpark 5.5 million that came in. We do have a 2% increase on this fund, so we're close to $4 million this year, heading into FY25, up for the new amount that commissioners, if following the resolution, will budget and transfer into the early childhood fund. And because we have the ability to carry forward, that number may vary slightly as we get closer to the grant making. We'll get this committee a total available to allocate figure.
The other thing that I just want to remind committee members of, as you're going through and scoring the applications, is there is a comment section for reviewers. And that is an important, oh, wow.
Wow.
Amazing. Great timing.
Perfect time.
So this is what it's gonna look like in your dashboard. And you'll click on that little red exclamation point that's in a red circle. That'll take you to each application to begin evaluating. You'll see a side-by-side screen. The left side will have the your evaluation screen where you're actually putting in your score. The right side will have the application for you to scroll through so you can see it side by side. And then at the very bottom, there is the comment section, and that is available to reviewers to ask any potential questions from staff to look at in the application, flag anything that might be helpful in terms of what helped you get to a score that you gave on a certain answer, anything that you think might be helpful as we're looking at this information together as a group, and or what might be helpful if an applicant asks for their application evaluation after the fact. We will provide any comments that are left by reviewers, which could be helpful feedback. So please do utilize that, try to make it as constructive as possible, and do note that that is potentially public comment or public record. So leave anything personal or really negative out. We're not looking for that in this. One question, then I'll get to you, Leslie, for the committee is last year we had an opportunity for committee members to pose follow-up questions to applicants if there's something that needed clarification. That happens about halfway through the evaluation process, which is already a very short window of time. Staff then brings those questions via email to those applicants, and they have about a week to return an answer that we provide to the committee. I believe last year we only had 1 or 2 instances of that being utilized by the committee. So wanted to bring that up and make sure that is something that still feels useful to this group, or if there's a discussion there.
So that was my question, was about the questions. Trying to remember, you gave us a deadline by when we need to have the questions in, and I just wondered when that was in the midst of those weeks.
Yeah,
Are, just from what you said just now, Sarah, are these questions that we're asking in order to get clear on our evaluation? Or are these questions we're asking them just generally or whatever? I think when we did it last time, it was what we wanted to know in order to do our scoring.
Correct.
correct?
Yes, so the questions would be posed to help clarify your final score for that application.
That's good.
the dates are listed on the committee's roadmap and will be in the email that we send you, and I'll tell
Okay.
them to you now.
I figured as much, but yeah.
So the applications from the grantees are due to the county by February 9th. The committee is set to begin their scoring February 12th. Questions for the grantees, if the committee wishes to pose any questions for clarification, due by March 11th at 8 a.m. We'll give the applicants roughly a week to turn that around and get those back from those applicants by March 19th and turned around to the committee. And your overall scoring deadline will be April 1st at 8 a.m.
And the consideration there is, again, short window. The consideration is if all committee members are able to look through and kind of give at least a first peruse to each application before that initial period that questions need to be asked, to ensure that you're actually getting the questions asked and answered that are needed.
Excellent, thank you. And if anyone has follow-up questions, we can reach out to you between now and.
I guess question is that something that the committee would like to continue with?
You
Yeah,
mean
strong feelings
the
about that.
question thing or what?
The questions for
Yeah,
applicants?
I think it's very important.
Okay.
That's just me personally, but I think it's important we are as clear-minded as we can be when we do the scoring.
I would echo that. I think it was helpful to see a response to a question that was pending out there in order to make the scoring possible. And I think those that utilized it got helpful answers back from the organization that made a difference.
Yes.
Any concerns about continuing with that process?
I'm assuming that the little edits that we gave at one of our meetings upstairs a few months ago, those got incorporated into.
Yeah, we had our kind of process review in summer
Right.
timeframe and did reflect those.
Thank you.
All right.
All right, and just so we are meeting all of our quorum requirements, I wanted to name, we have at least 6 members in the room right now, along with online, we have Diana, Heather, Linda, Misty, and Philip. I think all of those are still with us. So we are checking our box legally, unless I'm missing anything, Mike. I will next move us to our next presentation, Burnett Walls, who's with us for a 15 to 20-minute presentation followed by a Q&A session. I won't ask anyone to necessarily not save their questions for the end, but if we can, we're gonna have a period of time that we can dive in and address those all at once. We hear the meat of the presentation. I was gonna say that's a great way to start a presentation. It's spoiling the well for us there.
Angelica appears to be seated in the corner to make this work.
Good afternoon, committee members. For those of you that don't know me, my name is Burnett Walls. I am a member of the county's strategy and innovation team. And I think this is the 3rd year that I've been here presenting to you all. Today, we're going to be talking about the NC ELI and M-Class output metrics that the committee lined on several years ago. So yeah, I'm here to review the latest set of data that we've received from Asheville and Buncombe County Schools. Okay, so we're gonna start with NCELI. And really, for those of you that are not familiar with this assessment, it is administered typically within the first 60 days of the school year. It happens once annually. The teachers are basically observing students for certain characteristics, certain traits that they display, which then they're evaluated on their competency across the series of different objectives. A couple key things just to kind of call out about this. This is administered across the state, so this is a statewide assessment. So we have an apples to apples comparison between Buncombe County and Asheville City. For the first time we presented data a few years ago, we did not, due to the different assessments that each school district administered. This is the second year in a row that the school districts were able to capture pre-K attendance data. If you guys remember, last year was the first year that was implemented, so now we have 2 years worth of data to evaluate students' performance in terms of attending pre-K versus not attending pre-K. So we're starting to build a little bit of trending there. And at time of kindergarten registration, we've captured the race and ethnicity data. And for ease of interpretation, we've rolled that into 4 categories. And you can see the 4 categories are Black children, Hispanic, white, and we have an other category, which includes Asian, American Indians, Alaskan Natives, and any other race or ethnicity not in those other categories. And just, you know, I just want to put out there that we are sharing this data. This presentation does not include any recommendations for improvement. This is purely a presentation on the key indicators that this committee aligned on several years ago. Any questions before we get going? Okay, next slide, please. So overall, here's a tabular overview of the objectives that are included in the results. One key point to call out for this year, last year you all determined that you wanted to see the social and emotional objectives included as well. So there are 9 key objectives as defined by DPI, and there are 5 social and emotional objectives that are included this year as well too. There is a baseline value that's been established by DPI for each of these that establishes competency score. Where possible, we've created this higher level aggregation of the results, which we'll see shortly, really for ease of interpretation. It gets very difficult in terms of stratifying the data when you're looking at all these different objectives, particularly when you start factoring in race and then tense pre-K and so forth. So really, in an effort to make the data digestible, you'll see we've got some higher level aggregation categories in here as well too. And then the approach in terms of stratifying that data, I'm trying to be very kind of consistent in the methodology. You'll see results presented at a high level, and then we start peeling back the onion in terms of stratifying it by race, stratifying it by pre-K attendance, and then there's a combined cut at the data where we look at it by race and by pre-K attendance. And for more information on the NCELI assessment there's a website URL that has a lot more in-depth information should you be interested in probing further. Okay, next slide, please. So this is a bit of an eye chart here, and I apologize for that, but this visualization reflects the, on the top chart are the 9 key objectives, and on the bottom chart are the social and emotional objectives. And you can see there are the values across each of the past 4 years, and these data points reflect the children that are at or exceeding that baseline expectation. So a couple key things just to call out here. This is where it gets a little clicky. So we have some animation here to kind of to draw your eyes to some of these key talking points. So for this year, there's 2 new objectives that were added, 17A and 17B. So you can see we have 9, whereas previously we had 7. These were not required by the state to be administered for the school, so there was no data that existed for these 2 previously. Next slide, next click, please. And then just general overall 10,000-foot assessment. You can see that 8B, which is follows directions, has the lowest average for the 4 years. The average across those 4 years is 41.5%, compared to the highest on the other end is 15B, which is notices and discriminates alliteration. That has roughly an 80% average across the 4-year period. And then when you look at, and one thing to call out too real quickly, particularly, it's all right, you're good. You can see there's some cyclical nature to the results, and that it's kind of up and down, and you're gonna see that trending throughout this presentation in that, you know, first year is kind of up, second year is down, third year goes up, fourth year goes down a little bit. With the social and emotional, that trending is not as prevalent as it is with the 9 key. Just general assessment there. And however, when you look at the categories, there is one category in particular that is lower than the other, and that is 3B, and that solves social problems. And you can see the average across those 4 years in that one category is roughly 50%. Any questions?
Quickly, you probably already reviewed this and I should recall this, but refresh me. The 23-24 data has already been collected, and if so, what was the pool date or time frame in the academic year?
Yep, so that happens within the first 60 days of the school year is when the assessment is administered.
And it's a one-shot dip, they're not reads.
For this one,
I got you.
yep.
All right.
Well, the M class is 3 times a year. which we'll
Okay,
come
that's
to
good,
next.
okay.
Yeah.
Got you,
Yeah,
thank you.
This is 1, other one's 3.
Got you, okay.
Good question.
Philip had a question on the chat. Are socioeconomic data captured so that poverty's role might be included?
Yeah.
Can you speak to the complexity of linking the economic disadvantage? Just refer to.
Yeah, I know that our friend, and I apologize. I completely missed giving kudos to our partners at the school district. So let me do that real quick before we move on. I just gotta pause for a second and really give thanks to the individuals that we've worked with at Buncombe County and Nashville City Schools to 1, collect the data, 2, synthesize it, and 3, really try and understand some of the takeaways here. Without their partnership, there's absolutely no way I'd be standing here talking to you guys. So super grateful that they're participants in this process. To that question, I know that there has been some challenges around identification of the economically disadvantaged children, and there are also some challenges, legal challenges with disseminating that data as well too. So trying to layer that in, I know we've explored that and it just isn't feasible at this point in time.
Is it okay to ask questions from the gallery over here?
One more.
Okay, thank you. Got in. Brett, I know we've talked about this in the past, but the challenge of being able to reflect the children and a little bit, you know, with a little more nuance. So for example, knowing how many children have an IEP that might impact some of the cognitive objectives is always helpful to know. And the other one, knowing how many years the child has been in a childcare program.
Yeah, and that's, yeah, so your first point, I believe that data does exist in what we're getting back. The second one, that I know that there's been some challenges in terms of collecting that pre-K data, because it's a manual process that the parents basically fill out an application. And some of the the fidelity around that data has been a little challenging at times. So there's some inherent issues with that.
So maybe somewhere later you point out what's the percentage of children within this pool who have an IEP?
No, we do not for this cut. And that has not been something that the committee has asked for previously, so.
I'm making a list of the suggestions as you present.
Okay, next slide, please. All right, so then this is where we now start stratifying this data by race. And for ease of interpretation, the data points that are reflected up here on the screen represent a 4-year average across the objectives. So just want to make sure everybody's aware of that what we're seeing here is a 4-year average across each of these objectives. So a couple key takeaways here. Click please. Nope. Oh, sorry, go back, my bad. So I want to call your attention to the vertical orange bars in the top chart, and those represent Hispanic children. And you can see across these objectives that vertical orange bar is the lowest of the 4. So historically, Hispanic children have had the lowest or smallest percentage of children at or exceeding expectations. On the other end of the spectrum, you can see the vertical green bar, which represents white children, is the highest across each of those categories. On average, the delta or the change between Hispanic and white children is roughly 18 points. So there's like an 18-point spread. And then the delta between Black to Hispanic children is 6 points. You can see there's a very kind of consistent trend across all of those in terms of what the length, if you will, of those vertical bars are. So you can see that it's consistent that Hispanic children are the lowest, typically white children are the highest, and Black and children in other category are roughly about the same across all of those. Looking at the social and emotional, Black children in 3 of the 4 objectives have the lowest, and that I'll call your attention to the vertical blue bar on the bottom chart. Other end of the spectrum, the vertical green bar representing white children, consistently the highest or the highest percentage. On average, the delta between Black and white children is 13 points in social and emotional objectives. And then Hispanic and children in that other category are roughly at parity for 3 of those 4 different categories or buckets. Any questions? Okay. Click, please. All right, now this is where we start getting into some of the aggregation that I talked about. So really, once again, you'll see as we start presenting this data, just for ease of interpretation, we've created these higher level sort of aggregation categories, if you will. And I mentioned previously that those two objectives, 17A and 17B, were not included in the first 2 years of the data that we aggregated it. So you see going forward, we now, instead of having 4 to 7 key objectives as our highest category, it's now 5 to 9, and I'm referring to the top visualization. So really, for the 9 key objectives, our sort of top category, if you will, are the percent of children in that are in the 5 to 9 key objectives. For the social and emotional, you can see that we have 5. We've created these roll-ups where we're looking at, we're stratifying it based on children at or above standard for 0 to 2, and then 3 to 5, 3 to 5 being the most desirable, obviously, in that particular category. And once again, you can see some of that that illustration of that cyclical trending that I referenced earlier in terms of up, down, particularly in these higher level roll-ups. Anybody have any questions around this and the methodology that we're going to be presenting going forward? Okay, next slide, please. All right, so now this is where we start, once again, aggregating this by race. And in these two charts, once again, just for ease of interpretation, felt it made sense to really represent the most current 2 years. So you can see these are the past 2 years that are reflected in these particular visualizations. So if you would click, please. You can see calling out here that Black and Hispanic children have the lowest percentages. And once again, we're representing here those top categories, the 5 to 9 in the top chart, and then the 3 to 5 in the bottom. So looking at the top chart, Black and Hispanic children have the lowest percentage over these 2 years as compared to children in the other and white category. And then looking at this, the children in the white and the other category are at parity for this particular school year. Next click, please. And then the children in the other category showed a slight increase, whereas all the other categories showed a decrease between these 2 school years. And then quickly call your attention here, the delta between Hispanic and white children are roughly 22 points for this most current school year. All right, now moving on to the social and emotional. In these, in this category, you can see that Black children have the lowest percentages across the 4 categories. Next click, please. And then white children and the other category are close to parity. And then for looking at the high to the low, so in other words, comparing white children to Black children here, there's, next click please if you would, there's roughly a 16-point spread between white and Black children in the social and emotional objectives for this particular school year. And then realistically, when you look at this, you can see that in social and emotional, all of the races are showing a decline between these school years. So there's a dip. Slide, please. Okay. Now we start looking at the.
And Burnett, quick time check.
Sure.
We're about at our 20-minute mark on presentation.
So I gotta speed up.
We need to move quickly.
All right, got it. All right, so here we go. This is the breakdown between children that are attending pre-K versus not attending pre-K. So high level, the takeaway here is a good news story, is that we're seeing children who attend pre-K typically have a higher percentage in the higher category ranking. So in the top chart, you can see you have higher percentages of kids that attended pre-K in that 5 to 9 objectives versus those that didn't. Same is true for the social and emotional. So good news story here is that there appears to be some benefit to children that attend pre-K in terms of the performance on these assessments. And then here we go, breaking it out by race. This is where we start comparing the children who attended pre-K, the benefit to seeing that across the different races. And I'll move quickly through here. Really, the takeaway here is that we're seeing the highest results for white children, and then typically we're seeing the lowest results for Black children. One interesting trend to call out here is when you look at this particular school year, when you look at the difference between children that attended pre-K versus not attended pre-K, the biggest delta is actually between Hispanic and Black children. So you can see there's roughly a 15-point bump between those kids in the Hispanic races and Black races for those that did versus not versus did not versus did attend pre-K. So takeaway here is that potentially you're seeing a great benefit for Black and Hispanic children. But the trending is kind of inconclusive in that when you look at these 2 data points, you're not seeing similar trending for the prior year. So not sure exactly what's going on there, but I thought it was worth calling out anyways. And then in terms of the bottom chart, interesting trend here, you can see that in the prior year, Hispanic children had the highest percentage in terms of results for kids who attended pre-K, but there was a significant decline this year. You can see they went from roughly 77 to 61%, so a 16% drop. Not sure what the causal factor of that is, but once again, something that appeared relatively noteworthy. Do we have any questions? I know I'm moving quick, just given to time constraints. Okay, keep on chugging along. Click on through. This just provides a breakout in terms of, to provide some context around children taking the assessment broken out across the races. You can see the top chart represents the count of kids who actually took the exam. Once again, you can see white kids represent the largest percentage of total, and then you can see that Hispanic children would be second, and Black children and children in other category are roughly at parity in terms of the aggregate count. Couple noteworthy takeaways when you look at the children attending pre-K versus not attending pre-K. For this particular cohort of children, roughly 69% of the Black children did attend pre-K, 37% for Hispanic, the other race 62, and white was the 58. Slide, if you would. All right, now we'll get into the M-class results. So a little bit of a difference with the M-class assessment. The two key differences from my perspective are that this is administered 3 times throughout the year. So you can see the beginning is within the first 6 to 21 days of the school year. The middle is 80 to 100, and then at the end, 155 to 170. So it's 3 times a year. And the manner in which this assessment takes place is that the child sits at a computer with a teacher, and the teacher kind of facilitates the assessment at a PC versus observing in the classroom. So 2 very distinct differences in terms of how the assessment is administered. Next slide, if you would, please. Okay, so here we go, breaking this out. Once again, you can see we've got this is aggregated in the higher level categories. These going forward, we're going to be representing this as the percent of children that are at or above benchmark. So that's what's displayed here. When you look at the trending, if you click on this, you can see there's a very kind of linear trend where the child's proficiency improves as the school year goes on. Not surprising. In terms of the data points that are reflected there, you can see they're almost at parity year over year. So very consistent results year over year as it relates to the overall scores. When you start, click through. So when you start looking at the breakout in terms of the children who attended pre-K versus not attended pre-K, once again, I think there's a good news story here to tell in that we're seeing some positive results or benefits when you look at the percentage of children, the proficiency for those that did versus did not attend pre-K. And obviously, as we collect more data, we'll be able to get more trending, more analysis on this going forward. Any questions? Okay. Good news story here, folks. I think that we're seeing benefit for children that do attend pre-K programs. And then now we start aggregating this out based on the different races. So if you go ahead and just click. So just one thing to call out to you in that top chart, you can see the Black and Hispanic children, their scores are roughly at parity for the results at the beginning of the year compared to the children in that other and white category. The scores are roughly 3 times that of the children in the other and white compared to the Black and Hispanic. Click through. And we're just doing then some comparisons between the different races here. Go ahead and click through. We can get through this stuff, I think, pretty quickly. And then the end of year results, you can see that, once again, you have Black and Hispanic children roughly at parity, whereas on the other end of the spectrum, you have white kids showing the highest percentage of results as well too. I know we're moving quick. Any questions?
So we're gonna have folks ask questions at the end. Go ahead and follow up via staff so we can see
Okay.
as much of this as possible.
Yep, all right, no worries. And then here we're looking at the trending broken out by race, by pre-K attendance. So once again, you can see overall very similar linear trending upwards, whereas the proficiency increases as the school year goes on. One interesting thing to call out here is that there's roughly a 15-point delta for Hispanic children at the end of year for those that did versus did not attend pre-K. And then if you click through there, so the vertical blue chart represents Black children. So at end of year, there's actually a slight decrease in terms of the percentages with regards to those that did versus did not attend pre-K. Through. And then when you look at the results for the beginning of the year compared to where we were last year compared to this year, there's some very, very different trending, and it's not quite as consistent as it was last year. So I'm not sure exactly what the causal factors of that are. But there is some variance year over year when you look at these beginning of year results. Okay, I know that was fast, I apologize.
Excellent. Thank you.
Yeah.
I appreciate you rolling with the punches on us moving quickly.
I know, I like I said, I apologize, I talked too much at the beginning there.
No, it's good. It's good.
So we added social emotional this year in the reporting, which was a change from what the committee had seen last year. I made a note of those topics that had come up earlier in your presentation related to economic status, IEP, which I forget what that's an acronym for. Amy, do you remember?
Individualized education plan.
Individualized education plan, so it's students with either disabilities or other learning needs, and then potentially length of time served by a preschool. As you think through other things that you would like to ask, what if, could it be possible that we look at the data by this? Please send them to staff and we'll keep that conversation going year round. Looking at this and hearing all of this information, takeaways for me are pre-K works. That's good. We've seen it in research studies and we're seeing it played out within the data here locally with it for our kindergartners that attend the public school systems. And we have severe disparities in educational outcomes that are present as the students walk into kindergarten. So as a early learning focused committee, continuing to center and think about ways that we can have an influence there remains a priority. So I'm volunteering to be the receptacle for feedback and questions, and I will get with Burnett and our data team in follow-up as we continue this year-round conversation.
Thank you, Rachel. Excellent. Well, I won't waste any of our time with my commentary here. Jump right into the Dogwood Health Trust Workforce Development Project presentation by Dr. Williams, Victoria, Tricia, and Stephen.
So we have been really excited to have Dogwood Health Trust here. I'm bringing up little name tags so that you can see their names. Dogwood, as we all know, has been a great community partner in the space of education. It's one of the 4 primary focus areas of their institution for investment and all types of other partnerships. And we've been really appreciative of Dr. Williams and the education team and have been looking forward to getting them on the docket. Certainly there's a lot of parallels in what the needs that you all are looking to tackle. And the strategies and approaches and opportunities to really collaborate here is what we're seeking. Stephen, there you are.
Just for the minutes, Stephen was the one who didn't want to come up, so ask him all the questions. Thank you all for being here with us, it means a lot.
And I'm sorry about the tech today. Not my responsibility. Noah's the universe, and that's what has caused us to be a little off schedule. So we've got half an hour with all yours.
Okay, well, I am leaving us off, so y'all have access to the presentation just on your computers, even though it won't be
Yeah,
displayed.
it's in the meeting packet.
Yeah, okay. So I'm Trisha Wilson. I'm the associate on the education team. And we wanted to just start by introducing the team to everyone. So I'll let everybody go down the line and introduce themselves.
Hello, everyone. I'm Victoria Brownlee, and I'm the officer on the education team.
Erica Williams, Vice President for Education.
And Stephen Blunt, Community Investment Assistant for Education.
So I am going to walk us through most of the presentation, mainly because on the team, the bulk of my work is focused on early care and education, but really we all work on every aspect of education on the team. But that's why I'm kind of leading us off. But just for folks who might not be familiar, I just wanted to share about Dogwood's purpose. So we fund projects and collaborations that increase access to housing, education, economic opportunity, and health and wellness across Western North Carolina, with an emphasis on community equity. I did share our map in case folks needed to see that, but our footprint extends to Cherokee County in the far west, and then Avery, Burke, and Rutherford counties as our eastern border. Obviously, we are the education team, so I just wanted to kind of share with y'all how we focus our work. So we focus on projects that go across the education continuum. So we bucket it generally into early care and education, K-12, and then post-secondary. Within early care and education, we recognize it is an ecosystem, as you all well know. So really we're focused on helping families in our footprint to have access to high quality, affordable, and accessible care and education so that all of our children in our region can enter kindergarten ready to learn. In K-12, we invest in projects and programs that assist children during the school day, but then also out of school as well. So that critical after 3 time, really with the goal of providing an excellent academic and social emotional education so that students graduate ready for college or career. Thank you. And then in post-secondary, we've primarily partnered with our economic opportunity team, really with the goal of reducing barriers to credential attainment for folks in our region so that they have access to high quality continued learning and can access family sustaining wages. So one of the things that Angelin asked me to share, yes, thank you, is just kind of what has informed our work. So I tried to just provide kind of a snapshot of what we're learning, what we've been learning. So kind of starting at the bottom right of this slide, we have really benefited from working with partners who've gathered data for education, our region, and helped us understand the current state of education across our footprint. So in the bottom right, we partnered with the Education Policy Initiative at Carolina, or EPIC, and they did a landscape analysis of K-12 education outcomes across our footprint. We got that in October of 2022. And then that visual on the bottom left, we also partnered with EPIC, and they provided data to us about efforts to address summer learning recovery post-COVID. In that middle, the bottom middle, we worked with the North Carolina Center for After-School Programs, and they provided us with the landscape analysis of out-of-school time programs in our region. So we could learn what was available after 3 p.m. For students and families across our footprint and who was taking advantage of those programs. And then I'm sorry, do you mind going back just for a second? And I'll just touch on those ones at the top. So those have been our partners in the ECE space. So the 2 kind of gold colored reports, that is from our partner Child Care Services Association. So CCSA did a quantitative data study for us on the early care and education landscape in our region. That's that one on the left. And the one on the right focuses in on their Teach Early Childhood Scholarship Program. And then the one in the middle is a report from CANDLE, which is Care and Learning, which is an initiative of NC Child. So that was a group of listening sessions, and I'll dive into that in a minute. So you can go ahead and go forward. So I did want to just talk a little bit about the reports from CCSA. And just in case folks aren't familiar, so CCSA focuses on strengthening accessible and affordable quality early care and education by providing supports for families, communities, and the workforce. So the reports that we received in 2022 really informed our funding effort focused on workforce development. So I think that it was the combination of these studies and information that we had gathered from partners in the community as well that were really instrumental in letting us know the need to focus in on the ECE workforce. So that RFP launched in the fall of 22, and it focused on sustaining and improving the conditions surrounding the ECE workforce. We really had 3 objectives. So it was to increase access to existing ECE credentials, to attract new or career-changing adults to the ECE profession, and to improve working conditions for the existing ECE workforce. And I will highlight 2 projects focused in Buncombe in just a couple of slides, but just wanted to also highlight that all of these reports and recordings of the webinars and everything can be found on the education page of the website.
Can the online viewers be able to see any of these slides, please?
So for the folks who are online, they should be a part of the packet that was sent out, at least the slideshow itself.
The slideshow is just stuck on the original first one. Okay, thank you.
Continue, please.
Yeah, sure. Next slide, please. So we have continued our partnership with CCSA. We actually have a report from them in hand right now. We had the benefit of working with them on a qualitative research study. So they have recently finished up a quantitative statewide workforce study, and we engage with them to follow on with that to do a qualitative study on the ECE workforce in the Dogwood footprint, the 18 counties in the Qualla boundary. Really to learn why the ECE workforce does the important work that they do. So we have that report in hand. We're working on final revisions, but hopefully we'll be able to have that to the community in the coming weeks or month, we'll say. Next slide, please. And then just to share a bit about CANDLE, just in case folks aren't as familiar. So CANDLE has 2 primary goals. So the goal of the CANDLE initiative is to put quality, affordable childcare within reach for all of North Carolina's families, whatever their income or background. And the next goal is to ensure that early education teachers are paid fair wages and childcare providers earn enough to be sustainable in every community. So the approach to the CANDLE initiative was to partner with organizations in 34 counties to host listening sessions where childcare providers, teachers, and parents could voice their concerns and share what they want the early care and learning system to look like. So really what they've identified in the report is what they've called the 3-legged stool to high quality childcare, which involves trust, affordability, and availability. So I would say how we've used this report internally, we received it last August, 2023. We did a community-wide webinar to share the results of the study. It's also on the website. So I think we've used it internally to inform our grant making, decision-making for 2024 and beyond. But CANDLE also is using the data to create a list of items that stakeholders can advocate for in the state legislature and beyond. So there is an advocacy component to this work. Next slide. Okay, Angelin asked me to give kind of a snapshot of our ECE funding to date. So that is this slide. So our grant making from 2020 through 2023, our efforts that have focused on early care and education. We've had 46 partners and a total of 62 grants totaling just over $23 million. I did just want to make a note that that $23 million does not reflect money out the door. So many of these grants are multi-year investments. So for example, through our ECE RFP, many of those are 3, 4, or some are even 5-year awards. So their end dates are not until 25, 26, 27, even 2028. So this is our total award amount to date. And then just to kind of give sort of a snapshot of how the work has spread out across the different initiatives. Obviously, the bulk of what we've done has been focused on workforce development. So 65% of funds have been focused on strengthening and stabilizing the ECE workforce. We have partnered with ECE providers in K-12 districts when they have been interested in strengthening their ECE program or sometimes expanding to offer more slots. Sometimes what that looks like is, for example, a district may have access to a classroom that's being unutilized or underutilized, and they might be able to transform it to serve students through NC Pre-K, and they need startup funds. So they need supplies, materials, and we can help kind of seed that for them to make that classroom age and developmentally appropriate to serve those students. The other thing I wanted to highlight, because there's always an other category. So for us, that 5% for other ECE related efforts, just an example of that. We've partnered with Reach Out and Read. So they offer evidence-based early literacy programming in the medical home. And so we have partnered with them to expand their reach in our 18 county footprint. And next slide. So I did just want to highlight, since we're here at the Buncombe County meeting, I wanted to highlight a couple of grants to partners in Buncombe County. So 2 of these reflect partners that came through the ECE RFP. So that's AB Tech and Verner. So as I talked about in the beginning with the 3 objectives for that funding opportunity, one being about increasing credentials. AB Tech had some really strong data about their EDU 119 pass rate or lack of pass rate. And so we can support them in their efforts to improve that pass rate. And then with Verner, that project really aligns with our effort to strengthen the existing ECE workforce by providing mental health supports to staff. And then Colaborativo La Milpa, this is an example, this was not through the ECE RFP, but just an example of another partner in Buncombe County that we've partnered with. So that's their El Talar program, which is home-based childcare, really providing culturally competent training and materials and resources to their teen network of care providers. Next slide. All right, and now I'm going to hand it to Erica, and she gets to forecast what we're doing looking ahead.
Yeah, meteorologists have a really tough time. But when I look at this image, this open road, the horizon, there's a lot ahead of us. We have, thankfully, and this is, I guess, news that's new, we have been endorsed to pursue and extend our commitment to ECE workforce and beyond at Dogwood, and to look at its deeper integration across the 4 strategic areas. We are economic opportunity, health and wellness, housing, and of course, education. And so in the coming weeks, I'll be in front of our CEO, Dr. Susan Mims. And then by the summer, I believe, I'll be before the board, kind of making this case for what the 25-30 strategy for early care and education could theoretically look like for the 18 counties that we serve. And right now it's all in the air, but there are a few pieces that are really clear in terms of what we've learned so far from the investments, the sizable investments that we've made. This will include a mix of short and long-term investments. What you all know in this room better than most is that the issues that surround the ECE workforce are systemic and deep. What you also know is that it's tied to policy. And so for so many of these issues, we will not be able to make our way out of them. We must absolutely address policy and advocacy. And so Dogwood is a part of a group of funders across the state known as Invest Early and Seed. We are all wholly committed to seeing systemic change with ECE across the state. Recently, you may have seen the announcement of the child care liaison that will be placed at Commerce. That was a co-funded investment by our group. Many members of our organization donated towards a co-funding opportunity to place someone at the Department of Commerce because this is an economic issue. And so part of understanding some of the levers that we have to move in our next 5+ years of this work is to really look at and unpack what is the policy advocacy angle for this work. So looking at our relationship and our work with the other ECE funders across the state, making strategic moves such as that one to make sure that we're in front of the right audiences with the right messages. I just asked Trisha over here a second ago, how many more of our other 18 counties has a group like you all? You know, knowing how and when the readiness is for our other counties that we're responsible for is really going to matter if we're talking about being a part of the narrative change that's needed in the state for early care and education. So we're definitely going in heavily with a policy advocacy thread in that piece, if my wishes are granted, this summer with the board. Among that piece too is the understanding of this ecosystem of early care and education. What our parents and our families told us in the Candle data statewide, but then certainly in our region and within our 18 counties, especially in the West, is there's a need for a variety of types of ECE settings. And so that family care work that Trisha highlighted is so critical for a big part of our ecosystem within Buncombe and beyond Buncombe. So we are taking a closer look at things that have been done. Blue Cross Blue Shield of North Carolina did a RFP a while back. There's some work in our footprint in the region that's really taken off with a group called Homegrown, and some things that are going on with Smart Start Transylvania and other places. We're watching, we're listening, we're paying attention to what's going on in that family care, friend, neighbor network space, because there are some opportunities there to take care of some serious deserts that we have across our westernmost counties. So looking at our ecosystem, looking at the long range game here with policy and advocacy, making sure that we are engaging all of the stakeholders, our local chambers, our county governments, business and industry. And then while many of us have mixed feelings about the biennium budget, looking at the 3 or 4 things that did happen there at the General Assembly for the next 2 years, and looking at where we can possibly work strategically to help advance the conversation. And then, of course, working with our early education caucus and Raleigh, we just see lots of opportunities in our 25-30 strategy. Again, I'll be before Dr. Mims in a couple of weeks with big ideas. We'll continue to look at what we've learned so far from the ECE investments that we've made with workforce. And then we'll make sure that equity, because I think what we saw clearly earlier is the need to think about equitable approaches to the work that we do within this space and continue to lean into that. We've done a lot of that in this effort. It's evident when you unpack the work that we've done so far. We will continue to lean into an equity and resilience theme in our 25-30 strategy. So what's coming, I don't know, but I can absolutely tell you I can see the big threads that we're weaving, and it all makes a tremendous amount of sense. Questions?
While I have a brief pause and folks are thinking about their questions, because I know you have them. I know
Yes.
that we have questions here.
Please.
Public comment sheet is over there. If I don't get any public comments in about 10 minutes, I'm gonna just keep the rest of the session just Q&A, so we can focus on our guests here and ask them, make the best use of their time while we have them here.
Sure.
Can you just elaborate a little bit more on the position that's funded at NC Commerce and what are they doing and any achievements there since it's been funded?
Right, well, the first achievement is that it's been funded, it's posted, and there are applicants in the pool.
Okay.
That's as far as we've gotten so far. However, in theory, it's pretty significant because this person will be working closely, and Deborah Durr already has a working committee of people at the chamber, right, that are the folks in the business space for whom, and I'm looking at Amy because we've talked about this indirectly off and on over the last couple of years. I'm amazed for those of us that have been in this space for years or decades. Sometimes it's interesting to realize that there is a ground zero with our representatives and others in business and industry when it comes to understanding And so having a person planted there at Commerce who will be at the table with the chamber, who will be at the table with maybe thinking about how we're looking at ECE metrics for businesses we're attracting to the state. It's Katie Dukes' article that was just published a week or so ago in Ed and C that talked about what we've learned from Michigan, New Mexico, et cetera. North Carolina is rated #1 for attracting businesses, but there's not a metric there that requires businesses to codify childcare for their employees. So in my vision, this person will be at the table helping leaders in the state redefine what is success for us in the state economically, and making sure that those at the table understand the very fractured, fragmented system that we have, because we haven't made the public good commitment that we have for ECE, like DPI. And so even just that piece, listening to our early caucus leaders, the disequilibrium around really understanding the pools of funding that go into ECE or not, having someone at the table to help unpack, bring awareness, and advocate, it's going to be big. But we'll make sure, I think the description is posted. Somebody on the team can make sure that we get it to you all so that it's so that you can see the job description because it is there, it's spelled out. And for our investment, for the funders, we were very clear about wanting to see certain types of metrics in 3 years or so. And that this wasn't just open money with no expectation. So, yeah, absolutely.
Where does it fit in the structure of Commerce? Where is this person slotted? Are they way up with the leadership, so they get included in these decisions?
Well, the secretary, because if I'm not mistaken, I don't want to say they're part of her cabinet. She made the announcement a couple of weeks ago. I will need to pull the org chart to see where they sit exactly.
I think that's important.
Absolutely.
And it's great to hear about it.
It's a first. It's a first for us as a state, that's for sure. Yeah, we'll pull the description, and the org chart placement should be somewhere in that. If not, we can get our hands on it, hopefully.
Any other question from committee members?
Martin, I have one more. If nobody else. On your sheet here about the grants to partners in Buncombe County, of course, we've also funded this project Blazing Trails. I'm interested in knowing if you all would have an interest. Of course, this is for helping people successfully complete 119, which obviously is a gateway.
That's right.
Very important, and we need to do better in that, for sure.
Absolutely.
I'm wondering about whether you all might be willing to look at something from them around the same approach about incentives and support and all of that for folks achieving the AA degree, which is also, some of us think, that is underachieved in Buncombe County. So 119 is great.
Right, it's
What we
the
really want are
career ladder.
career ladder
Right.
and lead teachers who have the AA and getting folks to graduate with that degree. So I'll just throw that out there. Of course, we haven't talked to them or anything like that about this, but it just occurred to me, we're putting a lot of money into just the first step. But really what we want ultimately is from them is their degree program.
Absolutely. Well, let me say this and I'll yield to Tricia because we do have some. So your vision is exactly the vision we had broadly for this RFP, is to really look at opening up the career ladder, and particularly for groups that kind of get in at the entry level but don't seem to advance to those director roles and so forth, because we know that the degrees are the trigger, that the advanced training is the trigger to move up the ladder. So we saw a mix of things across our region that includes a little bit of all of that. So for what you saw within the Buncombe, you didn't see that. And I don't know that one of the things we funded in Buncombe hit on the AA. I'm thinking about Blue Ridge or some of our other partners with this effort. Interested always. Right now, we may be at saturation for this part of the effort, but interested, yes. And I'll yield. Tricia, what other comments am I missing here?
No, I think I agree. I think Erica and I are in conversation as we are on the whole team about, what's next with these funded partners and what they think they have capacity for and, what they see as well, because, it's not for us to decide, just like you said, you haven't been in conversation with them yet. So yes, I think we're all thinking about kind of what's next.
Well, the other recipients of this amazing RFP that you all put out from other counties like Haywood or Blue Ridge, did they happen to also approach the AA degree as their key?
Oh, yeah, we've got a mix of very diverse approaches to recruiting, retaining, promoting within the workforce. And we didn't share the whole summary, but you could see that as well. That would be easy for us to get that over. But we saw a mix of approaches to truly opening up the ladder. And to Tricia's point, even in this 25-30 reset, I'm not convinced that we'll do another workforce piece because we're getting what we need to see out of that for the narrative change that needs to happen. I will say this, at the beginning of this work about 3 years or so, not quite 3 years ago for us as a team, really looking at where the West voice was in the state narrative. Buncombe, of course, being a leader in that regard, the Buncombe study that was done by CCSA was really kind of our flagship guidepost for making sure that we had that kind of similar data for our entire region. So I say that to say that I think we've done a lot of the things we intended in the first couple of years. We've expanded the vision of what's going on in the West. We've shown where our challenges and our deserts are in those pieces, and we've planted investments in workforce that are diverse and wide in terms of the things that a state can do to make appropriate investments in this space. And we are learning through the evaluation with Community of Science. We're seeing in our theory of change work very early indicators that are positive for what can happen when and if you do X, Y, and Z. We've gotten just about what we need to see out of that work to now move and advance the policy advocacy part of this effort. With that being said, I've talked to the team, as Tricia mentioned, about what are the highest and best cases that would be worthy of maybe another investment, and what would it bring and what would it do differently? So we're asking those questions and we're studying that. But we can absolutely, to the first part of your piece there, show you what some of the other folks are doing in our region with this effort.
That's great.
Absolutely.
I follow it in your newsletter, but sometimes you don't get, just a little blurb.
Little 3D, need a little bit more 3D with it. I'm all with it. I'm with it. Thank you for your questions and your thoughts.
Thank you.
Unless anyone has any burning questions, I'm going to do my best to not break the law as an attorney. Let me give a sincere thanks to y'all for being present with us, being willing to answer those questions. I know there's no small task ahead of all of us in this space, and I'm grateful that we have community partners that are willing to be here and talk to us about these issues and honestly educate, because we have a very specific scope in Buncombe County, and I think being cognizant of what surrounding areas are doing in the landscape across the state. I'm reminded of how far Raleigh is when I drive out there, and thank you all sincerely for keeping us in tune about what's happening across the state, and we'll continue to innovate and just keep that dialogue going if y'all are open to that.
Absolutely. Thank you. Thank you for the invitation.
All right. Do you have any announcements, Rachel? Anything burning? If not, I will go ahead and move us to public comment. Peppy, you want to start us off? I'm going to hold you for the first time since being chair to only 3 minutes. I'm not being mean.
Peppy's got his own timer.
I'm not too bad about that. No.
Can you hear me okay? Okay. I promise that I will be or become on topic. Just a little update. I was at the Asheville City Schools Board of Education meeting last night, as I've been for almost 10 years. I was at the Asheville City Schools Board of Education meeting last night. We have a wonderful new superintendent who is working very hard to creatively respond to pressure from the county commissioners for Asheville City Schools to be fiscally responsible. She is presenting a lot of back of the napkin, those are her words, math on where potential savings are. You probably are aware about discussions about consolidating middle schools. And the back of the napkin math is that there would be no savings moving Mumford North Star Academy into the Asheville Middle School building, but consolidating those schools would result in $3/8 of $1 million, $375,000 in savings, if there was no Mumford North Star Academy anymore. And my back of the napkin math and teachers' back of the napkin math puts the loss of students costing the district in excess of $700,000 to $1.5 million through losing 60 to 120 students to charter schools. So that's still in discussion. Where it is relevant to you guys is that this has also introduced the idea of moving from 5 elementary schools down to 4 elementary schools, which would mean consideration of closing Lucy S. Herring Elementary School, where there are currently 2 preschool classrooms. And so when the commissioners and others are communicating with Asheville City Schools and you're expressing the importance of early childhood education. And one other unintended consequence of that is that under North Carolina law, that makes that building available for any charter school like Peak Academy to move into. So those are just considerations for this group and for the commissioners. Thank you.
Thank you. Next up, we have Amy.
Hello, everyone. Thank you so much, Bernadette, for that presentation, and you and your team doing great work. So I just wanted to call out a couple of other factors that might be helpful in the future. And I know you guys have just wrangled a huge amount of data and presented it in a way that is super helpful and digestible. So some of the things that we've talked about in the early care and education community is getting a better sense of the impact of students who have limited English proficiency. And when I say impact, actually how their scores on the readiness tool as well as MClass, trying to get a better sense of how those students are doing. And so like children with IEPs, also finding out like what is the percentage of children in IEPs in that data. So that would be great. I know it's no easy task. And to Leslie's question about, pointing out your interest in having early educators who are in school moving beyond the intro class, ED 119. So just want to call out that the workforce development program at Buncombe Partnership has really looked at that and is supporting folks who complete the program to move forward to get their certificate, either in infant toddler education or preschool. So that's a total of 5 courses. And then from there, associates and ultimately bachelors. But that's also going to take an investment of AB Tech and I would say Blue Ridge Community College, because we do have a number of students that go there, in increasing the number of courses that are offered in Spanish. And the value of that, given the growing number of students, of children who are Hispanic. And just applaud Blue Ridge Community College for taking that on and know that it's a challenge to find teachers that can teach those courses. And then lastly, about family, friend, and neighbor care. I'm just really happy to hear folks at Dogwood call that out. So the family care home network that El Talar provides. So just to be clear, They're not licensed, and that is fine, and that is great because there is a quality standard built in for the folks at El Talar, and they made that really clear upfront. And that there is really greater demand for folks who can provide family, friend, and neighbor care to meet families' needs who don't need full-time care, but also to have that care available in their immediate community. So, and there are ways to do that. And I know it's a highly sensitive issue around unlicensed and licensed care. But with work through statewide programs, I mean, that other states have, there is a way to build in those standards to meet quality. And I think it's something that this committee should really look to and get better educated on as we're all trying to do that, because it's so demanding for folks to open a family childcare home that meets the physical licensing standards. So thanks, everyone.
All right, just as a quick reminder, grant applications are due February 9th, so we will not have another meeting before that process. Committee will begin scoring on February 12th. Questions for grantees are due to our staff by March 8th at 8 a.m. Responses should be back by all grantees inquired of by March 19th. The scoring deadline is April 1st at 8 a.m. Our next meeting is going to be March 5th in this room, 200 College Street, 1 to 2:30 p.m. again. And unless anyone objects, can I have a motion to adjourn?
So.
All right. Thank you all. I'll see you in March.